I don't know if this thing is on or not, but this is my first time talking on this. I'm gonna try to see if I can straighten it out. So anyway, what I was gonna do was a first time live video, and I don't know if you've seen any of my other videos. I've done videos before in the past. Some of them are pretty controversial. A lot of them have to do with a lot of it is articles that I've read and things that, that I guess opinions. I'll just leave it at that. Opinions. Some of the opinions of people that have made comments underneath the articles, and then my personal opinion about some of the things that have been happening lately. So this is like a first time video that I'm putting out. So it's not anything flashy or spectacular or anything like that. But I was looking at an article, and so I don't know if I can actually go to this article, how this is going to look, because I was going to try to switch off and read the article. So I don't know if you can see me or not. I haven't really worked out all of the all of the, how do you say that, kinks of trying to operate this new system here. So I noticed that they've been really like policing people's videos. And, we live in a climate where everybody's super sensitive about every little thing, every little word that people say. And so I try to be as descriptive as possible and explanatory about where some of my um, uh, thoughts are coming from. A lot of it is from articles that I've read, and a lot of the articles, sometimes I've noticed now you have to be careful of the articles because you have to find out where the articles are coming from. Some of them are coming from some really good sources of people who put out some findings, like maybe out of like Pew Research, or they might have like compiled together information from some data on a specific topic. And so this one, I was trying to title it. I don't even know if the title showed up at all, but I saw an article, and so this is what this video is about. And so I'm gonna, like, I don't know if you can see me. I don't know if you can see anything, because I was gonna switch off and read the article. So I haven't. This is where I say I haven't really worked out the kinks of this thing yet. And so it it was out of the Atlantic, and it's about education. So I talk about schools and education a lot because um, basically that's what I kind of involve myself around. So it's about public schools, the wider, richer school district right next door. And so when I was looking at the title of this article, right away I knew what this article was going to talk about. And just looking at the photo of the scenario of what they were about to talk about, it said public schools' dependence on local property taxes means some districts get isolated from financial resources in their communities. Now that I know full well about, because I've traveled around to districts and I've seen school districts. If you can't see my face, sorry about that. If you can hear me, great. So I'm actually reading from an article, so I don't know if you can see me or not. Off where you cannot, I don't know, where you cannot see my face up. I don't know. But I'm not, real flashy, or I'm not into all of that. I'm into like really serious topics. Um, so anyway, it's by Adam Harris, August the 1st, 2019, Public Schools Dependence on Local Property Taxes. So I was reading it, and maybe I'll try to put the title of the article. And so the Waterbury School District is quarantined within man-made invisible walls, partitions that hug it on each side, forming taut if unnatural boundaries on the map. So the school district in Waterbury, Connecticut is touched by 8 other districts, and each one whiter, more affluent, and receiving more dollars than Waterbury itself. Take the Wolcott School District, for example, where 87% of students are white, and with that which they spend $2,000 or more per the student than Waterbury or Waterbury. So they're making a comparison of the school districts, the ones that are more funded versus schools that aren't as funded. And the reason being is because of the neighborhood and the taxes that are spent that are going into those schools in those particular school districts. So Waterbury, which is 82% non-white students, or the Plymouth School District, which has a racial makeup that's comparable to Wolcott's, and which spends 3,500 more dollars per student. So that's a big jump economically in terms of student spending. So more wealth, more white students, and more resources for those kids. And so Waterbury is surrounded by what is Ed Build. And so I wish eventually, maybe when I get used to this whole thing, I'll be able to like put the article in there or some kind of way, because I usually like putting articles so you can see that I'm not making it up. But I'll put the title, try to put the title. So Waterbury is surrounded by what Ed Build, a nonprofit focus on equity in school funding, calls an isolating border. The group defines an isolating border as one that divides one school district from another that is at least 25% whiter and receives at least 10% more funding per student. So what is happening in Waterbury is not unique. So across the United States, in 42 states, there are 969 of these isolating borders, according to Ed Bill's recently released report. So the average disparity in funding along these borders was roughly $4,000 per student. So Waterbury, the group fund, or the group found, that is, excuse me for that, is the most isolated school district in the country. So Waterbury's predicament points to an unstable aspect of public education system in the U.S. The foundation of its funding comes from local property taxes. And so local property taxes is, the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhood, roughly around the schools. And so if you have a poor neighborhood, then the property taxes are probably going to be a reflection of how that school is funded. And there's a depreciation in that neighborhood, then that's going to be the result of how that school is funded that is local in that area. So that means inequality is often baked into the district lines. Wealthier communities will have more money to spend on their students versus poor communities, right? So it's an often mentioned but under discussed problem, particularly in the Democratic 2020 presidential candidates. But in May, Senator Kamala Harris of California took aim at the disparity. So it is completely upside down that we currently have a system where the funding of the school districts based on the tax base of the community. So she said during the town hall with the American Federation of Teachers in March, it was Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts who wanted to take a more national approach to fixing the problem. So we've got to use our federal education laws to help supplement local funding so we can get real money into our public schools K to 12th grade, Warren said. So that's Elizabeth Warren, the senator, and Kamala Harris, the senator. So pretty much discussing what types of approaches that they would use in trying to change things as they are. And so I've known all along, this is my opinion, that there's been a lot of disparities in the school districts because personally I have traveled around to the school districts and I saw school districts that are in more affluent or schools in more affluent neighborhoods that look as though they have more books, they're more cleaner schools, they're more well kept up schools. It looks as though that they're doing a lot more to help the students in terms of their learning and their well-being. And you can tell that it's more funded. You know, when you're in a neighborhood and you're in a school where it looks like people are really doing a lot more to help the community and the schools and the children, and everything's clean, and there's more newer books for the kids to access. The playground is immaculate, it's clean, there's more activities, there's more parent involvement, um, and not necessarily just parents that are coming to the school, because it's more than that. You can tell as a reflection, there's, better teachers, um, they're more active in their child's learning in terms of what kinds of programs are at the school that are readily accessible to the kids so that they can have a more well-rounded experience in learning. And so I noticed that there are other schools that don't have as much of that. They have less staff, they have less resources, they have a lack of funding that is a result of all of having a lack of thereof. So that is the reason why this article stood out to me, because it talks a lot about what is really going on. And I have actually saw this with my own eyes. So this is not made up and it isn't talked about very much. And so what shocked me is that there's some schools, however, that are in neighborhoods that you thought were affluent, but because they're public schools, they're not funded as well. But the private school sector in neighborhoods that are affluent, I I saw this out of my own two eyes. I'll take, for example, and what I've told, what I've been told from other people who have worked in Pasadena school district, that it depends on what area too, the neighborhood. So there's some neighborhoods in Pasadena where the schools, they have more access to activities and books and whatnot. And there's some public schools that I've noticed where there's a larger percentage of Hispanic and maybe Black students you'll see. And then what I noticed is that the private schools will have more of the wealthier um, parents will send their kids. Now, I'll be honest, I've seen the white kids going to the private schools, or the kids that come from wealthier backgrounds going to the private schools, because there's a lack of trust in the public school system. And so this is what I have witnessed. And I'm sure that's not just Pasadena, it's happening in other school districts. And so I found it rather alarming, but it shows another type of segregation going on where, like if you heard about the story of Ruby Bridges, if you heard about the story of Brown versus Board, about schools being desegregated, schools are segregated still, but it's based on economics. And so this is why this article was particularly of interest to me, because I noticed that even though we have laws in place that where in which I heard recently they were trying to get rid of Brown versus Board. Some people wanted schools to be segregated again. But I don't even really think that they have to do that because they still are. Economically, they are. And it shows. Schools that have, you know, people that have more money and they live in more affluent or wealthier communities tend to either they place their children in a private school setting where they can pay the tuition and they distance themselves from poorer communities or poor children from poor backgrounds. And so I've noticed that. And so it isn't something that is made up. And so this basically points out the disparities that really is going on. So back digressing to the article, it says we've got to use our federal education laws to help supplement local funding so that we can get real money into public schools, K to 12. This is from Senator Elizabeth Warren. And so, as part of this Thurgood Marshall Plan for public school education, the campaign of Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont writes that he will rethink the link between property taxes and education funding. So that's how the schools get funded, through the property tax. So if you're in a neighborhood or community that has dilapidated housing, poor community where people are almost living next paycheck to paycheck or next to nothing, and it's just really underfunded, then the schools are going to be a reflection of that. And so they're trying to figure out how to change that circumstance. So rethinking that link is important. So Rebecca Sib, I believe it's Siblia, an executive director of EdBill, told me because micro districting, the term, this term, for what is happening in Waterbury and elsewhere, handcuffs some other tools of the government that might use desegregate schools. So in 1974, the Supreme Court case Milken versus Bradley, the justices ruled that desegregation plans could not leapfrog school district borders. So the means of federal government could shuffle children between schools only in same district in places like Waterbury. Interestingly, even the Democrats argued over the utility of busing as a method of desegregation during the first two rounds of debates. So school funding only tangibly or uh, tangentially came up as a remedy. So we are still upholding a school system that is separate and unequal. And so that's basically what I just said, but this article is pretty much repeating what I've said. So Sibilia told me, so a browse through the 2020 Democratic contenders. So right now there's been Democratic debate. I made my 2 cents under one of the videos. I think it was part two of the Democratic debate and how I felt about it. And, I'm somewhat into some political issues. I had put my input, my thought, very readily on social media. I try to be um, honest that it is basically my opinion. But, a lot of people are entitled to opinions, but I just think there's a lot going on, a lot of sensitivity. A lot of people are sensitive about their place of origin and who they are and what they stand for. But what I disagree with is making people suffer simply because they can't afford what the next person can afford. Basic needs like food, shelter, education, um, health, healthcare are things I think are not a thing that you should look at as an economical right. It is a human right. And so that's my personal opinion about that. It shouldn't be based on who can afford it. It should be based on people and what people need and the well-being of everyone. And so that's my thoughts. So if you're against that, then this might not be the channel for you. So a browse through the 2020 Democratic contenders' websites does not turn up much when it comes to addressing the link between property taxes and public schools. And when I reach out to several campaigns, including those of Harris, Sanders, Warren, former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro, and South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, only Castro's campaign responded with details about how he might address the gap in terms of schooling and funding, school funding. A spokesman for his campaign told me that his education plan would provide full Title I funding that would direct federal investment in low income and high poverty communities that are often under resourced at local levels, often as a consequence of high property taxes are structured. Several candidates, for their part, have argued for increased funding for Title I, which provides federal grants aimed at helping students in low income schools, but putting more money into Title I doesn't fundamentally reform the funding disparities. So school districts that are able to raise significant money from property taxes could still have an advantage. Okay. So Siblia offered a possible solution. States could address the funding disparity by tweaking how property taxes are distributed. And that's good because that's the key thing here, right? The key thing is how money is distributed in community, which more money is distributed in more wealthier communities because the people that are in the surrounding communities are they're more wealthier and they keep their money amongst themselves and their offspring, of course. Children, they pass on wealth, and there's been a lot of talk about wealth disparities and the wealth gap and wages being raised, and a lot of things having to do with um, how money is spent, but not how it's being distributed in terms of the further distance that it could go to help those who are in need. And so a lot of this, I believe, has to do with greed, and racism is involved in it, because some people feel that certain people have more rights or more of a privilege to receive more of the better things or even the basic things and needs in life than others. And I will say this, I think it's really sad that we've come to a place where people don't feel that other people deserve good health care, that they don't feel that other people deserve education or housing, that they would rather see people on the street suffering, they'd rather see children suffering, they'd rather, you know, cast out groups of people based on one or two individuals or bad experiences that they've had. Um, However, there have been some incidences where there's some fear in certain communities. When you live in low income communities or communities that don't have a lot of money, there's the fear that, when you have a lot of people who are struggling, that you're living in this area and everybody's trying to fight for the bottom, basically. Everybody's trying to have their basic needs met. And so what ends up happening is people turn against one another because there's not that many resources. It's just like when children are in classroom and there's not that many books, there's not that many toys, or there's not that many learning um, tools. They tend to get bored and they tend to fuel at each other. And if there's only one toy to two kids, what do you think that's going to create? And so people in general can be like that. as adults. If there's not that much housing, or there's a lack of good housing, lack of good resources in terms of healthcare, food, there's food deserts, there is a lack of spending in those communities, you're going to probably have more incidences of crime, more incidences of people, you know, going out doing things that they normally probably wouldn't do had they had the resources readily available and access. Probably a high mortality rate, death. Um, and then when people are living in this distressed neighborhoods, there's probably a higher incidence of drug abuse and substance abuse because people are suffering and they're hurting. And you're going to see probably more incidences of hate crimes as well because people turn to one another and they look at each other and point fingers. It's your fault. It's your fault. Oh, it's this group's fault. It's this group's fault because you did it to us. So that's where a lot of this is also coming from. So this is probably a long, heartfelt opinion outside of this article from the Atlantic, but I believe that the school segregation has not ended. And so going back to the article, it says that states could address the funding disparity by tweaking how property taxes are distributed. Perhaps all property taxes could get pooled within a country, or not, I said a country, a county, right? And then evenly distributed across districts, which I don't believe will happen. Would be nice. That's how it should be, so that every kid could have access to education and healthcare and the funding in their schools so that they can have a better life. Everyone should have a better life, not just one group. After all, there are about 4.5 times as many school districts in the country than there are counties. So, or maybe the tax dollars could be pooled statewide, then, regardless of where students live in that state, they would receive the same amount of resources for their education. The federal government, she said, could incentivize states to pursue these tweaks with funding matches. So it might be a long shot, but it could work. So the Democratic presidential debates, when they have turned to education, have so far focused on busing, college affordability, and school safety. So Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado notably veered away from busing to talk about modern segregation during the second slate of the debates, but only for a moment. But the schools trapped within these isolating, segregating borders will require more sweeping solutions to break free of them. And so this is by an Adam Harris. He's a staff writer of the Atlantic. And so I thought his article was pretty good and well thought out, because I have seen issues such as these happen in communities, even here in California. And I'm sure they've happened in other places as well. And so I don't know. I usually say at the end of the video, what do you think about these issues? Some people put in their input, well thought out input, and then others will, usually they just kind of view the video and they give it some thought, and they might look at some of the issues that are going on and they may put a counter opinion. But here's the thing, it's just sad because we've come to a place where now people are choosing to fund where they feel they see fit. And I've noticed, even though people are saying that we want a better world and a better life for kids, and we want to have all these good things, but what ends up happening is the same bad aura or the same bad history of segregation, of racism, they indirectly teach to their children, distancing their children from other groups of people. Um, taking a kid out of environments so that they're socially unaware of other people's cultures. And so they only see what they see in movies and in TV, and they believe everything that they see as being the only thing, because that's the only place where they're being taught about Black people or about Hispanic people or about poor people or about the homeless. They're not really in those communities. And so they're uh, adjacent. They either live on the outskirts or they're totally far removed from those situations. So they have no cultural experiences. And so they grow up with that attitude. And so when they do come in contact as adults with people that are from different backgrounds or different cultures or different racial backgrounds, they treat people how they learned. And so if they think all Black people come from the ghetto, then that's how they're going to treat all Black people they come in contact with. You could be an educated Black person, a person that is not even from, the States. You might speak 5 languages, but you're being treated because you're around this person who has no culture awareness that Black people have different cultures, different languages, and come from different places and have different skill sets and education levels. And so you're being treated as maybe someone who doesn't have much education, or they see you as a criminal on TV, so they treat you as such. And so you get treated like that in the workplace, you get treated like that when you try to apply for a job, and you get treated like that when you do get hired on a job. They don't want you to be in leadership positions. They don't want you to hold um, any managerial or, you know, administrative positions, or they don't see that you're fit to do that, because in their mind, they've only been exposed to one thing, what they see on TV, and it's something negative all the time. It's never anything positive. And it's always what they see in the news of some Black person getting arrested or being gunned down by a police officer, because we're viewed as unruly and criminals and people that aren't educated, and we have to be told what to do. And so when they come in contact with someone who has more education than them or about the same education level as them, maybe higher, it upsets them, because what they were told or what they learned was not the truth, or they're missing something and they're confused about it. And so they treat you in a harsh manner. I've been treated like that on the job. I left a job because and got another one because I was told that one group of people develops differently than another group of people. And so it made it seem as though that Black people were aliens, like we were something from outer space or somewhat. And that, from what this person told me, is that white girls develop slower and Black girls develop faster. And they were able to keep their job. They were able to stay employed. And I was going through hell. I was being mistreated. And this was in a school setting. And this person, she bragged about how she worked 25, 30 something years and said she couldn't be fired. And she's white. And I'm being honest about this. And she basically ran me around like I was like a poodle. Go get me this, go get me that, go do this, go do that. And because she had been there longer, the person that was over her took her word face value. And I think it had something to do with race as well. Because I happen to be Black, nothing I said had to be the truth. I had to be questioned every step of the way about every little thing I said. But her, that's the one thing. These classrooms do not have cameras in them. And so people can virtually get away with a lot of stuff in some of the classrooms. And if they're mistreating the workers that are working alongside of them, you can't see that. And so what ends up happening, they also have high turnovers at some of these schools because some of the worker people are being either underpaid or overworked or they're being mistreated. And I'm saying this because it happens. And it has happened to me and it has happened to other people, colleagues of mine, where they'll even try to find things to try to make up stories on you to make you feel like you're incompetent. And 9 times out of 10, the persons who they need to be getting rid of are the ones that are in charge of everything. That's the reason why the school districts are underperforming. And so they never change what's been happening because they never get rid of the people that have been there the longest. They keep up a lot of drama. And so there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of drama, there's also nepotism, there's racism in school districts, and segregation. And this article is really well fitting, and then there's lack of funding in schools that are lower performing, that are in low income neighborhoods because of property tax issues. So the title of this article is The Whiter, Richer School District Right Next Door. And it's under Education out of the Atlantic. The date is August 1st, 2019, and it's by an Adam Harris. And so I'm saying that. Anyway, I'm going to let this video go out. I'm just going to test it out and see if it came out. And I guess I will be back with maybe another video in the future. This is probably my first live video, and it's about my heartfelt opinion. Now, I have to say this before I end this video. If you comment on this video, please do so in an educated way. If you're a person that is just coming to the video to create a problem, I'll have to go through the necessary steps to delete comments or delete that person, so I won't have to be harassed just for having a decent opinion about how things are going in terms of the school system. So I know there's a lot of hatred on social media. There's a lot of hatred out off social media. It's not just on social media. And so I'm not here to be flashy. I'm not here to show off. I'm not here to add insult to injury. Just merely bring about some of the political woes that our government experiences and some of the things that happen in society today that are current, that are really heartfelt opinions of some people that I've known, and my own opinions, coupled with all of that. And so, and what I've experienced, like life experiences. So this is probably what my videos are about too. So too, about some of the things that I've witnessed that I think are really, really crazy, in my opinion, I have to say, and allegedly, because you got to use these words because people are so sensitive. And when you say what's on your mind, people want to censor you, or they want to delete your videos, or they don't want to hear the truths of what you feel. And I guess, too, there have been some people who have been extremely angry on social media. So when they put out videos, sometimes they say things that sound very threatening. And, I'm not here for all of that. I'm just really saddened by some of the things that have been happening more recently. And I'll be honest, I believe everybody should be able to say what they want to say, but within a way where they explain their position, why they feel what they feel, and that it doesn't have to do with hurting someone to where it's deadly. you know? And they should be able to receive criticism in a way where if it's not deadly, and it explains that other person's position, like be able to debate educated wise, or be able to speak educated wise in a way where you can explain your position, even if you have to use resources, articles, and not cherry picked information where you're trying to compare one race towards another. I really dislike that. because what it is really a person deep down on the inside. They have a lot of hatred. They have a lot of pent up emotions. They've been removed from other cultures, and so because they have a lack of experience of other cultures, and they've only grew up in one home with one belief and one thought, they have a narrow way of thinking, and so they treat others when they come in contact in the real world the same way. And so that's where a lot of that anger comes from. Some of it is because they just have no experience in dealing with other people that are different than them, or have a different point of view, or a different way of living, or they haven't really researched these things for themselves. And then when they research them, they get the wrong information. They get like stereotypes, and they tend to feed into those, and that's the reason why you have a lot of angry people out there too. And then there's also anger that's justified because people have been mistreated, they've been hurt, they've been alienated, they have like basic needs that are removed from them because of their race or because of their economic status. And that I'm against. I don't feel like one person should be treated better than the other because he has the talent or he has the looks or the money, and I think it's wrong. That's my stance on that, and that's why I said if you disagree with that, then it's true. Some people have luck, maybe good fortune, and then some people put themselves in a rabbit hole. Yeah, that happens, but that's not everybody's story. Some people will work hard all their life, and they're never able to become famous. They might be able to have a good life. Maybe they don't want to be famous. From what I've seen lately, I don't want to be famous. It seems like it seems like the more money, the more fame, the more drama, the more intrigue, and the more you have these outsiders, making comments on your personal life. Which some of it is sad. I've seen some things happen recently to some people that are like really sad, situations, and you do make comments because you're like feeling like, wow. You think about it, you compare your life, you're like, okay, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm not doing that. Well, I'm not in that situation. That's sad, you know. So, anyway, with that being said, this article that I was reading from is out of the Atlantic. I'm saying that again, repeating it, and hopefully the title: Education, the Wider, the Richer School Districts Next Door. Public schools' dependence on local property taxes means some districts get isolated from the financial resources in their communities. And it's by Adam Harris. And so, with that being said, I don't know, you can look the article up. Maybe later I'll be able to try to figure out how to manipulate this thing and try to get it to where um, you can see the article, maybe a little small box in the corner somewhere. Maybe a small box in the corner, like a tiny box in the corner. Anyway, with that being said, I'm going to end this video. Have a wonderful weekend. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for listening.